Hi everyone, I'm Cindy Winget, the author of Gothic Horror Mashups, and welcome to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about Gabbyreads. She's a popular YouTuber. She's been doing it for like 10 years, so I'm sure you're familiar with her. So I watch her channel frequently, and she just had her 10-year anniversary video where she talks about her favorite books of the last 10 years. And as I'm watching this video, I was like, you know what? I own all of these books, but I haven't read them. So I just thought it would be a fun video to read Gabby's favorite reads. So she came up with 10, and I can only read about 6 in a month is about my average. But it worked out well because there was one book that she talked about that I didn't own. And then she had 2 from Lisa Jewell. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll just choose one Lisa Jewell instead of doing both. And then 2 of the years I've already read. So that left 6. So I was like, this will be perfect. So she went through and did, every year what was her favorite book for the last 10 years. So in 2015, she said that her favorite book was The Kind Worth Killing. And so I was like, okay, cool. I have this book. I haven't read it. It's very, very popular, so I should really get on it. So this is about a man and a woman, and they meet each other at an airport, and they both have people in their lives that they would like killed off. And so it's from like Strangers on the Train. I haven't read that book. I haven't seen the movie by Patricia Hightower, where basically they will like decide to kill the other person for the other one so that they have like an alibi and they won't get caught. So very intriguing premise. So this is a thriller I've been meaning to get to for a long time, but just haven't. Hello everyone. So I'm back because I finished The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. And I can understand why this is such a popular book. It was so much fun to read. It hooked me right away. Like right as I started, I was just immediately intrigued and excited and hooked. And I thought the characters were great. But I will say, it's definitely written by a man. It's very preoccupied with sex. Just throughout the book is just everything comes back to sex and sex and sex and naked women. And every time you are introduced to a woman in this book, you always have to know how big her breasts are and, different things about her body type. And I don't know. So it's definitely written by a man. It's very apparent. But the character of Lily Kitchener, she's very interesting and intriguing, and it was a little bit annoying because it's like every man that meets her is like immediately obsessed with her for some reason. I mean, sure, she's beautiful, but there's always like some unknown reason that they just, wow, Lily, she's so just amazing, I don't know. So that was a little bit annoying in my opinion, but at the same time, I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. There was a twist halfway through that I did not see coming. I thought I knew what the twist was going to be, and I was definitely wrong, and I was shocked by it. But I will admit my enjoyment of this book went down just a little bit after that twist. I was loving it up until that point, and then I was still interested, and I still liked it. And then there was like the last third of the book where we're introduced to the police detective that's investigating the murders, and that was my least part of this book. I was just like, meh. Like, I didn't really necessarily care a whole lot for the last third of this book. Like, I didn't hate it. Like, it was still good, but it just wasn't as good as the beginning was. And unfortunately, now that I've read this book, I deemed that I could read the premise of the sequel, and it won't be spoiled anymore. But it sounds like we're going to be following that same detective, and I was kind of like, oh, really? Because to be honest, he's the least interesting character in the whole book. So I'm like, But I think Lily will be in the second one. Not I think. She is going to be in the second one. So that's good. But I think he's going to be the main character, though. And I'm like, Like, I just didn't really care for him. But he was the least inspired. He was the least interesting. I don't know. Didn't care for him. But overall, I really enjoyed this one. I wouldn't give this the solid 5 stars that Gabby gave it. I would give it 4 stars. But I'm still really glad I read it, and I am interested in continuing the series. So now let's see what the next book is I'm going to be reading. In 2016, she said her favorite book was The One by John Mars. So this is a science fiction thriller about a society where basically you can do a DNA test and they will match you with your soulmate, the person that compliments you the most and that you would, love the most or whatever. And it's going to be interesting because I think it could be anybody. So, like, it doesn't have to be your same sex, it doesn't have to be somebody that's single, it doesn't have to be somebody that's your same age, So, I can see a lot of interesting things that go along with that, different problems and issues that would come of this. And so, again, sounds very interesting. I read The Family Experiment, which is like the third one in this series. Luckily, I was able to read it as a standalone. It does talk about the one, I believe, a little bit, but I was able to follow the story without needing to go back and read this one first. But I really enjoyed that one a lot, so I'm excited for this one. So I have finished reading the one, and I think this book was overhyped for me. I'm probably only going to give this a 3-star, which isn't a bad rating, but it's definitely not the 5 stars that Gabby gave it. I don't know, for me, the writing in this is very, very basic, and you have like 5 or 6 points of views, which at first I was like, oh great, because it was like you have a chapter and it's a person, and you have a chapter, it's a different person, you have a chapter, it's a different person, and it does it like 6 times. I'm like, okay, how many people are going to be in this book? But I think he did the same thing with The Family Experiment, and so it doesn't necessarily bother me. He's just setting up the characters, but at first it's a little bit overwhelming how many people you're going to be following, but once you get into it, you're like, okay, it's fine. But to be honest, there was maybe 2 POVs that I was actually interested in reading. Most of them were just okay. Like, they had interesting moments where I was like, oh, wow. And then it was like, eh. So this, that probably doesn't make any sense. But this book is easy to fly through. Like, I read this so fast, which is surprising because it's like 500 pages long. But the chapters are extremely short, and every chapter pretty much ends on a cliffhanger. And so that's what I mean when I was like, oh, that's interesting, because the cliffhanger was always interesting. But then when you get to the next chapter with that point of view, it was just like, whatever. Like, I don't know. It just wasn't really holding my attention. So one of the POVs in this book happens to be a serial killer, and they're matched up with a police officer. And I was like, wow, that is very interesting. And so that is the storyline that I actually enjoyed reading. And then there was a girl named Ellie, and most of her stuff was pretty bland, but halfway through on her POV, you get to learn a little bit more about the technology behind being matched with your soulmate. And so I liked learning more about it. So that's why I liked her POV. But I don't know, the rest of the POVs, they were okay, but they weren't great. And it definitely read more like a romance rather than like a thriller. So the only points of view that were actually thrillery was the serial killer and Ellie's point of view. So I liked it, but I didn't love it. I just thought it was decent. But like I said, the writing is very simple, very basic. Not all of the POVs were holding my attention, but yeah, it was propulsively readable because it was written in such a way that you just want to keep going. I didn't love it as much as I was hoping to love it. Let's put it that way. In 2017, she said her favorite book was Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. So I hear the twist in this is crazy. That's what everybody says, that it has a crazy, crazy twist. So I'm excited to get to that. This one almost sounded like a romance when I was reading the premise, but more like a crazy romance, like not a rom-com, but like a drama almost, like if I was watching a soap opera. But anyways, so this is about a woman who has a one-night stand with a man and doesn't expect to ever see him again, but she goes to a new job, and lo and behold, her one-night stand is her new boss. And then she finds out that he's married. And so she's like, oops, let's just never speak of that again. So she becomes friends with this woman, and they get pretty close, and then she finds out that this woman is his wife. So now she's kind of like embroiled with both of the people in this couplehood. But then I think their relationship is kind of toxic, and so she's trying to figure out what or if she should do anything about it. So, definitely a domestic thriller, but I don't know. I'm excited. I think it sounds fun. Hello, everyone. So I'm about a third of the way through Behind Her Eyes, and unfortunately, I'm going to DNF this book. So obviously, I do not feel the same about this book as Gabby does. because she, loved it, gave it 5 stars, best book of the year for her. I cannot get on board with these characters. They're annoying and insufferable, and I just can't connect to any of the characters. I don't like any of them. We're having two different points of views. I think our main character is supposed to be, can't even remember her name right now, Louise. I think she's supposed to be the main character, and I thought she was kind of like weak, and I don't know if weak's the best word to use, but she just seemed kind of, I don't know, I didn't like her. And then Adele, she was okay, but I don't know, and it's all just like these two women fawning over this guy who's like not even worth being fawned over. And yeah, I don't know. I just couldn't connect to the story. I couldn't connect to the characters. I just don't care. It was giving me very normal, regular thriller, like nothing interesting is happening. But I did hear that there was a crazy, wild twist to this book, and so I really wanted to know what it was. So despite having DNF'd it, I did go look up what the twist was, and yeah, I'm glad I didn't waste my time reading this book, because that surprise ending is just not my type of twist. I don't think I would have liked it, or I don't like it, I should say, and so I'm glad I didn't waste my time getting there for that ending. So yeah, this one is not a book for me. So for those of you that may love this book, good for you, but it's not my type of thriller. And then in 2018, she said her favorite book was Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. And I believe this is about a woman who has a daughter who goes missing and she never finds her again. But then years later, she starts dating this man who's a single father. And when she goes to his house, to meet his daughter, she realized that this daughter is a spitting image of her own daughter. And so she's like, what the heck? Why does your daughter look the exact same as my daughter? It is the same age. She's kind of suspicious that maybe this man had kidnapped her daughter. So it sounds very intriguing. I have not read anything by Lisa Jewell. I know, it's crazy because she's crazy popular, and I can't believe I haven't read anything by her yet, but I haven't. So this will be fun because it'll be my first Lisa Jewell book. Then in 2019, she couldn't make up her mind. She had 3 different ones that she really, really liked. And luckily, I've already read all 3 of them. So this is going to be the first ones that I skipped. So the first one is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. And this is about a woman who becomes a nanny to this rich couple who have like this smart home, basically, where there's lots of technology about it. But it also has like creepy vibes, which, judging by the title, it's supposed to be like a modern retelling of The Turning of the Screw by Henry James. So I really enjoyed this one a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's my first and only Ruth Ware book that I've read, and I loved it. And then she also chose Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I'm a huge Riley Sager fan. This one is like a retelling of Rosemary's Baby, and I really liked it. It had all the creepy, scary vibes that I want in a mysterious apartment building, and it was just a lot of fun. And then she also chose The Silent Patient. This one is probably my least favorite of the 3, but I did enjoy my time with it, and I didn't see the twist coming. And yeah, I thought it was an enjoyable time. And this is about a man who, it's been a while. I can't remember if he's a psychologist or if he's a detective, but somehow he ends up talking to this woman who murdered her husband, and he's trying to get to the bottom of it because she hasn't talked since. And he thinks that he could be the one that could get her to talk to him. So maybe he's a reporter. I don't know. I can't remember what he is, but I just know he talks to this woman and tries to get her to speak about her husband's murder. And then in 2020, her favorite book was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. And I don't know much about this other than it's an isolated setting because it takes place on an island and it's during a wedding. So I think it's like and then there were none type situation where you go to this wedding and the people get picked off one by one. I believe that's what this is. Guess I'll find out. I'm guessing, the bride has her bridesmaids come to this wedding, but something happened in their past that was nefarious and somebody's seeking revenge. That's what I'm getting from this. Okay, I finished the next book and I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a really good thriller. I wouldn't maybe give it the perfect 5 stars that Gabby rated it, simply because I just didn't have that 5-star feeling to it, even though there's nothing wrong with this book. So I'd still give it a 4-star, or I could say 4.5. I try not to do the half ratings, but it would be like a 4.5. So the author sets it up so that somebody has died, but you don't know who. So the whole time you're trying to figure out who has died. And then the killer, they set up lots of different people to be the killer, and, they all have their own motivations for it. So you're also trying to figure out who the killer was. So ironically, I knew who the killer was and the motivations behind it pretty much the whole entire time. But I didn't 100% know who the victim was, which I know sounds rather silly. But even though I did figure out who the killer was and the motives behind it, it didn't at all take away my enjoyment of this book. I still thought it was very atmospheric. I thought it was entertaining. I enjoyed the characters. Like, I just had a fun time with this. I thought it was a really decent thriller. So I do line up with Gabby in saying that I would recommend this one and that it is a very good thriller. And then in 2021, we have Razorblade Tears, and this is the one that I don't own. So this is the next one that I will be skipping. And this is about two men. One's a black man and one's a white man. And both of their sons are gay, and they start up a relationship with each other. And these dads were quite homophobic, and they were not happy about this. But then their sons end up being murdered, and so they are understandably grieving. And they come together to seek revenge on the man or the men that killed their sons. And it's kind of like this emotional journey where they come to terms with how they were as fathers, So it has like a lot of social commentary about being white versus being black and different economic situations, but also, the whole homophobic angle. I hear really, really good things about this one, but I don't own it, so I'm going to be skipping it. And then in 2022, her favorite book was Daisy Darker. And this is the third one that I will be skipping because I've already read it. This one has mixed reviews. I've heard a lot of people don't like it and a lot of people do like it. I personally liked it a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. I did think it was predictable. I saw both of the twists coming, so it wasn't shocking or surprising. But I don't always need a book to shock me. Even if I can guess the twist, as long as I'm enjoying the story and the characters and the execution, I don't really care that I figured it out. So, it's not like it ruined it for me. But I just really liked the atmosphere, and I liked the characters, and I just thought it was a lot of fun. So this is more like an isolated setting, and it's kind of like And Then They Were Done as well, where they get picked off one by one because there's always like a storm or whatever, so they can't leave. But yeah, I thought it was enjoyable. I really enjoyed my time with it. And then in 2023 is the next Lisa Jewell book, which was None of This Is True. There's these two women, and one of them's like a podcaster or something, and the other one's like, oh, I would be a great person to be on your podcast. And so she's like, okay, great. She has her on her podcast and they become friends. But then it seems like one of the women becomes obsessive with the other one and kind of tries to take over her life, basically. So I believe that's what this is. So I can't decide which Lisa Jewell book I want to read because they both sound really good, but I'm leaning towards this one. So I think I might do this one. I just finished reading None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, and I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a little bit slow in the beginning, took a little bit to get into the story, but once I did get into the story, it hooked me, and I flew through it pretty quickly. So this is about an unhinged woman. Actually, I think I'd give you a synopsis, so never mind. So one of the women in this story is very unhinged, and that's always great fun, but I felt like the story was pretty predictable, but it didn't take away from my enjoyment of it. I still enjoyed reading it. So I wouldn't say it was like a perfect 5 stars like it was for Gabby, but I would definitely give it 4 stars because it was a solid thriller and I really enjoyed it. This is my first Lisa Jewell book that I've ever read, which I know is insane because she's very popular, but I just haven't gotten to her yet. I keep meaning to and just haven't. But for my first book from her, I thought it was enjoyable and I would definitely read more from her. One thing I will say about this book though is I don't want to call it a trope because I don't think it is a trope. So maybe like the formatting of the book, I don't know. So one thing I'm kind of getting sick of, to be honest, with thrillers is when they do like a chapter in the beginning where it has like the climax, like the action of the story, and they put it at the beginning. So the first chapter doesn't happen until like the end. And I kind of hate that. It's gimmicky in my opinion because you're just trying to hook the reader, but it doesn't intrigue me, it just confuses me. And honestly, you could skip that chapter and just read it through and it wouldn't have any bearing on the book. You know, you don't know these characters, you don't know what's going on. You're just like, oh, someone's dead, or oh, something crazy happened, but I don't have any details about it. And again, I don't know who these people are. So instead of finding it intriguing, I find it annoying. I know that's just a personal preference. I know a lot of people that do like it because they do find it exciting and it does hook them. But for me personally, it kind of makes me want to roll my eyes at this point because like everybody does that now. And then she also did the thing in the end where you kind of have to leave things up to the reader's interpretation. You know, you have this unhinged woman and then it's like at the end, it's like, is she really unhinged, or, you know, was she telling the truth the entire time? Which again, I mean, is kind of interesting and intriguing, but at the same time, it's an ending I've seen over and over and over and over again when it comes to thrillers. And so I'm kind of over it. So it's a really good book. I really enjoyed it, but it has that thriller format that every thriller has, which is kind of annoying. But I mean, it didn't make me dislike the book by any means. You know, I'm not judging the book on that. But I just thought I would mention it because it is something that I personally find tropish. But again, I don't think it's a trope, really. It's just the way that they structured the story. But either way, like I said, it doesn't lessen my enjoyment, but I just thought I'd mention it. And then for 2024, her favorite book was is Kill for Me, Kill for You by Stephen Kavanaugh. And this is a recent release, just came out in the year 2024. And this is just like The Kind Worth Killing, where it's a retelling of Strangers on the Train, where, you know, they're going to murder for each other so that they don't get caught. So it'll be fun to read both of these books in the same month because then I can kind of compare and contrast them. So that would be really fun. So I have finished Kill for Me, Kill for You by Stephen Kavanaugh, and I think I finally found a 5-star read. I really, really liked this one. So it was action-packed. There wasn't a dull moment. There was no filler or fluff. It was just good all the way through. That being said, it's not a perfect book. It's close, but it's not perfect. There's one thing in particular that bothers me, and I don't know why it bothers me, but it does. So something happens, and I almost feel like the author is lying to you. Like, I know authors are supposed to misdirect their readers so that you can't figure everything out, but it was like such a blatant misdirect, and it was not even really necessary because when you're reading this book, your mind will already make certain assumptions. And so I felt like it wasn't necessary. Like, I already had the wool over my eyes when it came to this story until like 2/3 of the way through. But then a certain scene happened and I was like, wait a minute, well, how can that be? You know, and it really did do its job in getting me not to think certain things that were true. That probably made no sense, but I'm trying not to give out spoilers. But anyways, the author just has these 2 chapters where he just blatantly misdirects you, but it's to the point where it almost feels like a lie. Like, I don't know, and it just bothers me. I don't know, like, it's not a plot hole, but I don't know, I just didn't like that. So I don't know, maybe I'm just being snooty, but and then the ending was almost perfect, but I don't know, when I read these type of books, I really like justice to be served and to have everything wrapped up at the end because, you know, it gives you that rush of endorphins. It gives you that, you know, euphoric feeling of justice that you don't get in the real world. You know, you don't get to have conclusions. You don't get to have everything wrapped up. You don't get to know everything all the time. And that's why I read, you know, so I can have that feeling that you don't get in real life. And in this book, there was one character in particular, and I don't know how I feel about it because in some ways I feel like justice should have been served, but then in other ways I'm glad for the decision that the main character, well, one of the main characters made, because I feel like that was also good of her. If you've read the book, you probably know what I'm talking about, and I'm conflicted about my feelings on it. So I didn't think this was like an absolute perfect book, but like I said, it was close. But I'm still giving it 5 stars because I give out 5 stars just based on how much I enjoyed it and how much fun I had with it. And I really liked this book. I thought it was really good. So this book is what I thought the Peter Swanson one was going to be. I can't think what it's called right now. The Kind Worth Killing. So this is what I thought The Kind Worth Killing was going to be, because this is also a retelling of Strangers on a Train, where two strangers get together and they decide, I'll kill your person for you and you kill my person for me, and that way we'll have alibis, and they won't be able to trace it back because we have no connection to these people. And that's what I thought The Kind Worth Killing was going to be, but really it ended up being two people killing the same person. But this is what I thought that book was going to be, where you have like a switched murder. So I think that's really fascinating and interesting. So yeah, I really liked this one. I thought this was a very good thriller. And I know he's coming out with a new book called Witness 8. And so I looked it up because obviously I want to read more by this author. But I guess it's actually like the 8th book in a series. And so I don't know. It's one of those series where you're following like a detective or a lawyer. Oh, he's a lawyer. He's like a con man turned lawyer. And every book can be read as a standalone, but you don't get all like the nuances of his character and his backstory and his relationships and stuff, and so he's following different cases and different crimes in every book. So technically they can be read alone, but I think I would rather start at the beginning where I can get all of the details. But I did find, I think it's like the 5th book. It's called Witness, and that one sounds so good. So I might break my rule and read that one first, because it just sounds really interesting, because it's about a serial killer who, instead of being on trial for the murders, they didn't catch him. They caught someone else they thought was him, and he actually ends up being on the jury. So I'm like, wow, that is so fascinating. So I really want to read that one, but it's like the 5th, and I'm like, do I really want to go through 4 other books to get there? So I might break my rule and read that one first and then go back to the beginning. But either way, I really do want to read more by this author. I thought it was great. I would highly recommend this. So you're probably surprised to see me because you probably thought this video was over because I've read all the books. But because I DNF'd Behind Her Eyes, I had time to read another book, so I decided to read both Lisa Joel books. So I did go ahead and read Then She Was Gone. So this one was an interesting journey for me because in the beginning, I liked it, but I was like, okay, this is like highly predictable. I know exactly what happened, what's going on, and so I'm just reading. But then like halfway through, I got thinking about it, and I'm like, her other book that I read wasn't super twisty either. It seems like her style is just to write a very straightforward, almost like a crime novel, but obviously fictionalized. And, she's telling the story of crimes that took place in a very straightforward manner. And I got thinking about it, and I'm like, it doesn't need to be super twisty to be enjoyable, because in both cases, it's a very entertaining, very interesting book, and the writing style is really good. And so even though they're not full of shocking twists, I'm like, these are really good stories, though. These are really good books. And I actually ended up enjoying this one even more than the other one, which is funny because it took a little bit of getting into it to realize, what, it might not be super twisty, it might be predictable, but it's a really good story. And so, it's just kind of part of my journey of figuring out this author and her style and what she's about, and I enjoyed it. And I actually preferred the ending to this one. This is the type of ending that I really enjoy. So there's that. And there was actually a bit of a twist at the end that I didn't see coming, although I should have. When I got close to the point where it was going to be revealed, it kind of was like a aha moment, where, oh, okay. And I was like, I should have seen that one coming. So it wasn't like completely predictable, but again, I've read books that have like a really shocking twist, but then upon further reflection, the book itself was just okay. And then this is kind of the opposite of that, where it was pretty predictable, but you know what? It was a good story, and I really enjoyed my time with it. So I would give this a solid 4 stars. So this is also going to double as my March wrap up. So that's all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a like to let me know. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I come out with a new video every Friday, and I hope to see you in the next one. See ya.